Today, hardly any Indian university makes it into the world's top 200. This often raises a question: why doesn't India have global universities anymore? But there was a time when India was the world's education hub. Just like students today dream of Oxford, Harvard, and Stanford, there was once a university in India that the world dreamed of entering. Getting admission there was tougher than climbing Mount Everest. This was no ordinary university. Its academic standards were higher than what exams like IIT, NEET, or UPSC demand today. Nearly 10,000 students studied here. They didn't come just to read books, they come to understand life, how to live, and how to seek liberation of their soul. Students lived on campus while they studied. This made it the world's first residential university. Its name was Nalanda University. We have all heard stories of Nalanda, its burning and its destruction. But how vast was it really? How was education conducted there? And what exactly was taught within the walls? About 1150 kilometers from Delhi, in Bihar's Nalanda region, lies a place called Rajgir. It was here that the legendary Nalanda University once stood. The campus is spread across nearly 455 acres. Even by today's standards, that scale is extraordinary. Nalanda's story feels almost like a fairy tale. Ancient folklore says this land was once called Amar Garden, a vast mango grove. It is believed that Lord Buddha taught his disciples here for 3 months. Later, Emperor Ashoka built a Buddhist stupa at this very site. But Nalanda truly rose as a center of learning in the 5th century AD. Around 427 AD, King Kumar Gupta of the Gupta dynasty established a full-fledged university here. He didn't just build classrooms, he ensured steady funding and abundant resources also. That support from the king transformed Nalanda into one of the greatest learning centers the world had ever seen. This marked the beginning of a journey of knowledge that remains unmatched even today. Nalanda became India's oldest and most respected Buddhist centers of learning. Students came here not just from India but from across the world. For nearly 800 years, Nalanda thrived. It functioned like a complete academic city. There were monasteries, hostels, libraries, and classrooms. In the 7th and 8th centuries, the Pala kings took Nalanda even further. Rulers like Gopal and Dharampal strengthened the institution and gave it a new identity. Nalanda was no longer just a university. It had become a global symbol of knowledge. Friends, the story of Nalanda almost sounds unreal. This was not an ordinary university. It was a temple of knowledge that lit up the world. In the 5th century, Gupta Emperor Kumar Gupta laid its foundation. Nalanda became world's first residential university. Classrooms and hostels existed together. Teachers and students lived, learned, and debated under the roof. At its peak, more than 10,000 students and teachers lived here. Managing a community at this large scale required vision, planning, and immense funding. Because of that support, Nalanda remained a center of learning for nearly 700 years. And then there was its library. Nalanda's library was a university in itself. It is said to have housed over 9 million handwritten books and manuscripts. Imagine collecting and preserving that knowledge in a time with no printing machines. That is why Nalanda mattered. The Dalai Lama once said, "All the Buddhist knowledge we have today came from Nalanda." This made Nalanda not just India's pride but the intellectual and spiritual heart of Asia. Most Gupta rulers were Hindu, yet they openly supported Buddhism. Nalanda, though a Buddhist center, received strong patronage from Gupta kings. This was an age of religious and cultural freedom in India, and Nalanda reflected that spirit. It did not teach a single religion, it did not limit itself to one subject. Education at Nalanda was multidisciplinary. Each student studied multiple fields. Along with religion, students learned literature and law. They studied astronomy and mathematics, psychology, medicine, economics, and astrology were also taught here. By the 5th century, Nalanda had become a center of art as well. Art styles from Mathura and Sarnath blended here. Later, during the Pala period, the Nalanda School of Art emerged. Its influence spread far beyond India. You can see its impact even in distant places like in monuments like Borobudur in Java. Nalanda was not just teaching knowledge, it was exploring culture to the world. Historian Romila Thapar says Nalanda was not just a university, it was a civilized ecosystem. Learning here went beyond textbooks. Students were taught spirituality, discipline, and conduct. Nalanda was a Mahavihara, a great monastery. Similar to Buddhist monasteries even today, but Nalanda was different. It functioned as a complete civilizational system. Education was not only taught, it was practiced. Thousands of students and monks lived together in its hostels. They studied, they debated, and they researched. Nalanda was not preparing students for exams, it was shaping ways of life. But getting into Nalanda was not easy task also. Its admission process was as tough as IIT or NEET today. A Chinese scholar named Xuanzang came to Nalanda to study Buddhist texts. He documented everything from the entrance test to students' life. According to Xuanzang, every student was tested at the gate itself. There was no written exam. The test was oral. Gatekeepers questioned the students in depth. They challenged their understanding on the spot. Historian R.K. Mukherjee notes that these gatekeepers were learned scholars. They asked complex questions on the teachings of the Buddha and on the Vedas. Only those with deep knowledge were allowed to enter. Students had to be well versed in multiple religions and philosophies even before stepping inside Nalanda. Admission itself was the first grade test. Only about 20% of students passed this test. Studying at Nalanda was not for everyone. Most students needed royal support to sustain themselves there, and entry was the only first step. After admission, a student had to approach a guru and seek permission to become his disciple. Nalanda was not just a university, it was also a religious institution. To study there, one had to live as a monk. Education was built on the guru-disciple bond. Knowledge was not transferred, it was bestowed. Every student learned under the personal guidance and grace of their guru. At Nalanda, education was a way of life. This is why Xuanzang was left amazed by Nalanda. He wrote that the campus had around 1510 teachers and nearly 10,000 monks or students. Each day began with the sound of a gong, much like schools bells today. It marked the start of study and discipline. In the evening, the entire community gathered again. All the monks came together for Chaityavandan. It was a collective prayer to the Buddha. Nalanda followed a rhythm: study in the morning, reflection in the evening. Knowledge and spirituality moved together. During these rituals, time was kept using a water clock called the Kaidarian. A drum was played, so was an instrument similar to the Shehnai. Xuanzang writes that study at Nalanda lasted 8 hours a day. Learning followed a clear structure. First came discussion, then debate, then memorization, and finally deep academic arguments. At Nalanda, the guru-disciple bond was sacred. A student stayed with the same guru for at least 8 years. Teachers were seen as more than instructors. They were like fathers to their students. Even the Buddha had said, a teacher's love is equal to a father's love. At Nalanda, knowledge was taught with care and discipline was shaped by compassion. As I mentioned earlier, Nalanda had nearly 10,000 students and about 1500 teachers. That means one teacher for every 6 to 7 students. And this was happening 1,000 years ago. Even today, such a ratio feels impossible. Just look at any classroom around us. But Nalanda worked differently. There were no semesters, no grades, no report cards. A student's progress was judged through observation. Discipline mattered deeply. A good student followed daily routines, regular bathing, and participation in worship. Rules were strict. Eating at the wrong time or breaking discipline could lead to immediate expulsion. Xuanzang writes that there was no leniency. Mistakes were not forgiven. Nalanda believed that discipline was the foundation of true knowledge. Because of its long life and unmatched reputation, Nalanda became famous across the world. The university was funded by taxes from nearly 100 cities around it. That support kept it running for centuries. Nalanda was never limited to India. Students came from distant lands: China, Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Iran, and even Greece. Buddhist monks formed a large part of this global community. Many of them came from China, Japan, Korea, and Sri Lanka. They studied at Nalanda and then carried Buddhist teachings back to their homelands. Xuanzang was also one of them. In the 7th century, Xuanzang studied at Nalanda for several years. When he returned to China, he carried 657 texts and 150 Buddhist relics with him. He translated these texts into Chinese and founded a new school of Buddhist learning in China. Another Chinese traveler, Yijing, also known as Itzing, followed him. Yijing spent 10 years at Nalanda. He collected around 400 texts and hundreds of sacred remains. Through scholars like these, Nalanda's knowledge traveled far beyond India. It shaped mind, faith, and civilizations across Asia. In the same way, the Tibetan scholar Thonmi Sambhota came to Nalanda to study. What he learned here shaped history. He laid the foundation of Tibetan language, which later allowed Buddhism to take deep roots in Tibet. The Chinese monk Itzing writes that during this period, scholars and religious thinkers from across the world gathered at Nalanda. It was truly a global space of ideas. Through Nalanda, the very idea of university began to travel, not just across India but towards Arab lands and Europe as well. Nalanda did not simply teach students, it changed how the world understood education itself. Nalanda produced some of the greatest minds in history. Scholars like Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, Shantarakshita, and Kamalshila developed advanced system of logic here. Their work encouraged rational thinking and a scientific way of reasoning. It is believed that Aryabhatta, the father of Indian mathematics, wrote the Aryabhatiya book at Nalanda. Here, 0 was formally established as a number. This idea later became the foundation of algebra also. At Nalanda, Brahmagupta wrote Brahmasput Siddhanta. This text was later translated into Arabic as Sindh-Hind. Through this, India's mathematics and astronomy reached the Arab world, and from there it travelled to Europe. But Nalanda stood for more than knowledge. Education here was not driven by money, it was driven by self-discovery. Students came seeking truth, salvation, and a deeper understanding of the world. At Nalanda, learning was a spiritual pursuit. Just as Harvard or India's IITs attracts students today, Nalanda was famous across the world in its time. At the heart of Nalanda stood its great library. There were no paper books then. Instead, knowledge was preserved on palm leaf manuscripts. The library held thousands of them. Its largest section was called Ratnodadhi. It was a 9-story building. Inside were millions of handwritten texts. These covered philosophy and religion, medicine and mathematics, astronomy and literature. According to UNESCO, Nalanda spread knowledge continuously for nearly 800 years, and the immense wealth of it was the key reason behind that continuity. Nalanda did not just store knowledge, it kept civilizations alive through it. But then came the tragedy. Around 1193 AD, the Turkic invader Bakhtiyar Khilji attacked Nalanda. The great library was set on fire. Historians say the flame burned for days. There were simply too many texts. In a moment, centuries of accumulated knowledge turned into ash. It remains one of the greatest intellectual losses in human history. Some scholars risked their lives to save what they could save. The last known Mahamuni, Shakyashri Bhadra, carried the remaining text to Tibet in 1204. There, the teachings survived. Nalanda did not disappear completely. Its knowledge lived on through Tibetan Buddhism. That is why even today, Nalanda's legacy breathed within the Tibetan tradition. Knowledge was burned, but its spirit endured. Today, excavations at Nalanda tell a silent story. Archaeologists have found burnt pottery, broken fragments, and pieces of metal. These remains stand as witnesses to a lost world of knowledge. Because of its immense historical value, UNESCO declared Nalanda a World Heritage Site. This ensures that its legacy preserved. Nalanda may be in ruins, but its spirit still stands as a reminder of what humanity once achieved and what it must never forget again. Friends, the story of Nalanda teaches us one timeless truth. Education is not limited to books. It is a path to awareness, to social change, and to true liberation. At Nalanda, the bond between teacher and students was not just academic. It was spiritual, it was deeply human. Today, education often feels like a race to clear exams, to secure jobs, to compete. Nalanda reminds us of something deeper. True education empowers a person. It teaches us how to think, how to listen, and how to learn one from other. Just as ancient gurukuls carried dignity and purpose, we must rediscover the depth of our education today. Because when education loses its soul, society loses its direction. Nalanda's lesson still speaks to us if we are willing to listen. So this was the story of Nalanda University. I hope you like the video. If you like this video, please like and share the video and subscribe History Connect English for more updates. Thank you.